Lost cities are part of a genre that has fired human imagination for centuries, if not millennia. Lost artifacts, treasures, cities, kingdoms, and lands appear in folklore and legends the world over. They've helped to stimulate tall tales and mythology, like the lost cities of Cibola, searched for by early Spanish explorers and conquistadors in the Americas, always just over the horizon and ever elusive. But sometimes, those lost cities are very real, and they do show up from time to time, such as the recent ruins discovered with the help of satellite imagery in the Amazon rainforest. In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 cities that we know of from historical records that have since become lost, and may still possibly be found. Claudius Ptolemy, a 2nd century polymath living in Alexandria, records that a port by the name of Abaskan was a prosperous trading hub on the southeastern shore of the Caspian Sea, from which goods including cloth, salted fish, and horse leather flowed, alongside the merchants and travelers who dealt in such items. It was evidently around during the early Islamic period, because not only do Arabic sources record the port as having a mosque, but during the Mongol assault on the Khwarezmian Empire, the Shah fled to a nearby island next to the port. Genghis Khan had sent a trade caravan and an embassy to the Khwarezmians, but Inochuk, the uncle of Shah Muhammad II, seized the caravan thinking it was really full of spies and assassins. When the Mongols invaded, Inochuk was captured and killed by having molten silver poured down his throat. This wasn't the first time that war had come to the region during the lifetime of Abaskan. About 300 years or so earlier, the Rus raided the city and pillaged it at least twice. Evidently, at some point in the 14th century, Mustafi, a Persian intellectual of the Ilkhanate, recorded that the Oxus River changed course and the alteration in water flow caused the island that Abaskan was situated on to flood, and then eventually sink beneath the shores of the Caspian. It has not been seen since. The Kingdom of Aksum, primarily based in Ethiopia but whose territory also encompassed Eritrea, Djibouti, and parts of Sudan, existed for close to 1,000 years, between the 1st and 10th centuries. For most of its history, the capital was the eponymous city of Aksum, but following a series of wars, the capital was moved to the city of Kubar, which has since been lost. The historian Ibn Khaldun, who lived in the 14th century, did refer to the city, so evidently it was still around during that period. But where could it be located? There appear to be 3 competing ideas. The first is that Kubar is simply the city of Aksum by a different name, but if it is indeed a different lost city, 2 possibilities are that Kubar is located somewhere in the states of Amhara or Tigray, but the evident lack of material remains for the city continues to make it elusive. Essere Vatriae was a town situated somewhere in Umbria, one of the homes of the Serenates, which was recorded in the natural history written by Pliny the Elder, but which was reported as lost even in his day. Unfortunately, his writing seems to be the only reference to the town and to the people, but it is included in a list of Italic peoples who have since vanished by the 1st century. Given the volume of work in Italy, it's still possible that the ruins of this town are waiting on the hillsides, waiting to be found. The ancient Near East is home to some of the earliest cities in recorded history, and also some of the most famous lost cities. Wasak Kuni, capital of the Mitanni Kingdom, is one such city. We do know that the Hittites conquered the city towards the end of the 14th century BC, and then in the early 13th century BC, the Assyrians conquered and sacked Wasak Kuni, and established it as a capital for a new Assyrian province, but from that point on, no records of it remain, and the great capital appears to have vanished. So where do archaeologists believe the city to have been located? It's possible that the city is located somewhere beneath the mound of Tel el Fakaria. Since the early 20th century, that location has been proposed, with archaeologists taking very strong opinions for or against such an identification. Excavation has been going on at this site intermittently for decades, and thus far nothing resembling evidence of a Mitanni capital has been found. The proposed identification is largely linguistic, because a nearby city is known as Sikan, with the argument being that the Assyrian form of the Indo-Iranian is Wasikani, but no writing or other forms of evidence to confirm that have been located. And to this day, the capital of Mitanni lies buried in the sands, awaiting discovery. That is not the only secret kept by the desert. Akkad, capital of the First Empire in recorded history, lies somewhere buried in the sands of Iraq. It's present in the textual record by at least 2300 BC, and we know that it was still around during the time of the Neo-Babylonian Empire in the 500s BC, and that Neo-Babylonian kings like Nabonidus conducted archaeological work there, searching for old artifacts and relics they could use to bolster their claims to rulership in their own day. There are several locations proposed for the city, all within the general region of modern Baghdad, but essentially all proposed locations for the city place it somewhere on the lower banks of the Tigris, with one of the most favored locations being the mound known as the Tel Muhammad. But thus far no archaeological work has turned up evidence. And although there is another proposed site, El Sanam, which has indeed turned up limited material remains, notably fragments of an old Akkadian statue, the capital of the first empire in the world still remains missing.